I have a wife whom I love very much. I have 2 boys who are about to turn 6 and 12. Spent a lot of time with them. I'm working on my projects as much as I can. And this I consider to be a very important activity also.
Jonathan was inherently such a likable person. He was kind. He was honest. He was authentic. He was genuine. And he was just a lot of fun and also very smart.
He was not satisfied with simple questions. He wanted to understand the bigger context in which those questions were framed.
There's a line that divides people who have passed over into the condition I'm in from everybody else. In a way, there's no way that I can convey to you this feeling of the death sentence. There are some things that I learned throughout this experience about what's important to me as a patient.
What are some of these important insights that have come to you?
I'm glad you asked because I wrote some of them down.
Good.
I think the main one is just common sense, and that is to empathize, to put yourself in the shoes of your patient as much as possible. And I know that flies in the face a little bit of the training of professional detachment. And believe me, I appreciate how important it is for a doctor, especially an oncologist, who has to deal with patients like me, who they feel, with all their scientific training, is going to die, and it won't be very pleasant.
I completely agree with what Jonathan said. He's 100% on target. Physicians who are great are empathetic.
So many things flow from that. If you respect your patient, you will listen. If you respect your patient, you will have empathy.
But I think the second point I'd like to emphasize is how important it is for the doctors, the medical staff, to foster a patient's feeling of control and of hope to whatever extent you can, even if that's very, very small.
He was very thoughtful about that and how differently you are treated once you are a cancer patient with no hair. The kind of impersonal, even though you're with doctors that are caring and all that, you're on a gurney in a hallway and some radiology tech comes and takes you in to get your films, and you feel like you're just this sick guy to that person, and everything that made you who you were was totally unrecognized by the medical staff.
When first the surgeon and then the oncologist told me, after the results of the post-operative tests came back, that yes, the mass we saw was the same type of cancer, and this is really what's going to happen, I needed to know that right away.
He had a variety of reactions, as I remember. One was disbelief. One was panic. One was depression. But overriding all of those was a determination. He was determined that somehow he was going to try to beat the odds. He wanted to be the 1 in a million patient who somehow would survive.
Now, how could you try to give somebody in my situation a feeling of control and of hope in the face of all of this? What do you do? That's the art that you're trying to learn, I think.
As I said in my eulogy, I called him a humanist that wanted to make a difference for the people of the world.
I was reading an online memorial tribute to Dr. King that said he was a humanist in a technical world. It was really interesting because it actually made me think so much of Paul. And maybe so much about what the ideal doctor is, to be someone who's a humanist in a technical world. And I loved that phrase.
A central point is treating the patient as a client. One aspect of that, which I found very important, is keeping the medical records open and available to the patient. And I would say do that for everybody, except those who plead with you, I don't want to know. And even then, that's the art of empathizing, of getting into your patients and understanding as far as possible what they need. In the case like mine, where the odds are just appalling from the start, I think you can expect an alternation between periods of frantic searching and alternating with a commitment to some plan.
There were times when, of course, he was very, very down, and it was very hard for him to continue with the battle, but he did. And he maintained his normal family life as best he could under the circumstances.
Jonathan was many things. He was a scholar, scientist, social critic, jazz buff. He was devoted to his family. He was an honest commentator on life. He was too much a curmudgeon to be a naive optimist. Yet, he was too gentle and kind to be a pessimist.
Another point I'd like to make is do whatever you can as part of a medical staff to make the physical and institutional surroundings as pleasant as possible.
If you respect your patient, you will want to have the surroundings in the hospital and medical centers and doctors' offices reflect that.
Another point I'd like to urge on everybody is to help the patient build a support system and to reinforce his own status wherever it's possible to do that. So as a doctor, I would say, if possible, help the patient to find someone who will come with them, and not just for support, hold your hand or pass the time, but also you could talk it over. What did they mean by that? You shouldn't fear or disparage any effort that the patient makes to try to build that support for himself. Don't feel threatened at all if your patients are seeking help, even from other doctors. If they want to get up and leave, they'll tell you.
Could you say a little more about the changing locus of hope as the disease progressed?
The major change in hope is, for me, was pretty recent. My hopes are still of living well in the days that I have, keeping as much strength as I have. Erling will tell you that I came to talk to him just 2 weeks ago, and my voice was a great deal stronger than it was then. I'm surprised at how fast I have weakened in the last couple of weeks. So I'm glad we're doing this today. I would like to see a lecture every year whose basic point is just to remind people of some of the things that I've been talking about today.
When it comes to the lectureship, certainly, and the origins of the lectureship, it's all recorded in his journal. It reflects the enthusiasm he had, the vision that he had for it, and the determination he had to see this thing get started, and he really felt that it would have an important, lasting effect.
He was very sick by the time he did that session with Erling. It's incredible how long he went when you think about how sick he was at that time. And he desperately wanted to attend the first lecture. We had set it up and had the first speaker planned while he was still alive.
Rita Sharon presented the first Jonathan King Lectureship, 1991. That's wonderful because a variety of remarkable people have given the lectures.
I think the King Lectureship and Dr. Jonathan King's words are so relevant and important and just really relevant now, even 30 years later.
I think that's one reason that the lecture series appealed to him so much. He could turn a terrible situation for himself into something that could possibly make a difference for other people.
I think one of the roles of this lecture, and maybe the primary one, is what Dr. King was talking about, where he says, try to get into my shoes and try to think about this experience for me as a person and build care around that. And in the way you talk to me, think about that. And it's such a simple message, like to think, don't forget that your patient is a person. But I think in all of the science and all of the busyness and all of the suffering, it can be weirdly easy to neglect that. And so I just think this lecture is such a beautiful way to re-elevate and reconnect with what's most important.
So I'm certainly not alone in all this. All of you must be aware that just your being here means that you're part of a movement which is trying to make this happen. But I'd also like to be there, make a 3-minute introduction, and through the magic of editing, we could say, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jonathan King. Welcome to the 20th annual lecture."